Hey guys, howdy. It's Professor Suresh. Delighted to be back again for my 25th video. Silver Jubilee, right? Okay. In process of publication on YouTube today, 8th of June 2020. The topic for discussion today is a burning one: consumer protection in its infancy in India. Consumer is the end user for either product or service. In computer, law, medical domains, the term used is client customer. Customer protection is the practice of safeguarding buyers of goods and services and the public against unfair practices in the marketplace. Consumer protection measures are often established by law. Such laws are intended to prevent businesses from engaging in fraud or specified unfair practices in order to gain an advantage over competitors or to mislead the consumers. They may also provide additional protection for the general public, which may be impacted by a product or its production even when they are not the direct purchaser or consumer of the product. For example, government regulations may require businesses to disclose detailed information about the product, particularly in areas where public health or safety is an issue, such as with food or automobiles. Consumer protection is linked to the idea of consumer rights and to the formation of consumer organizations, which helps the consumers make better choices in the marketplace and pursue complaints against businesses. Entities that promote consumer protection include government organizations such as Federal Trade Commission in the United States, self-regulating business organizations such as Better Business Bureaus in the US, Canada, England, etc., and non-government organizations that advocate for consumer protection laws and help to ensure their enforcement, such as consumer protection agencies and watchdog groups. A consumer is defined as someone who acquires goods or services for direct use or ownership rather than for resale or use in production and manufacturing. Consumer interests can also serve consumers consistent with economic efficiency, but this topic is treated in competition law. Consumer protection can also be asserted via non-government organizations and individuals as consumer activism. I am a consumer activist, really. Okay. Consumer protection law or consumer law is considered as an area of law that regulates private law relationships between individual customers and the businesses that sell those goods and services. Consumer protection covers a wide range of topics, including but not necessarily limited to product liability, privacy rights, unfair business practices, fraud, misrepresentation, and other consumers' business interactions. It is a way of preventing frauds and scams from service and sales contracts, eligible fraud, bill collector regulation, pricing, utility turnoffs, consolidation, personal loans that may lead to bankruptcy. Science and biotechnology have progressed enormously in the last few decades, contributing to people's improved quality of life along with an increased awareness about people's rights. People are often misled by sellers in day-to-day purchases, leading to consumer dissatisfaction. To safeguard the interests of consumers, countries worldwide have developed consumer protection organizations. Even in India, Consumer Protection Act, shortly COPRA, C-O-P-R-A, or much shorter than the CPA, was passed by the Parliament in 1986 as welfare legislation in the interest of consumers. Healthcare services, whenever purchased by receivers, are also expected to provide consumer satisfaction. Earlier, remedy for medical negligence was available only under the law of tort, T-O-R-T, civil. But with the inclusion of healthcare services under Consumer Protection Act, a spurt in litigations arising out of breach in medical and dental profession is seen. Thus, it becomes imperative for health professionals today to be aware of such laws, which will be beneficial to patients and doctors and society as a whole. Besides the protection granted under Indian Constitution, the Indian Government of India has passed a number of statutory regulations to and amended from time to time to put more teeth into the enforcement machinery to ensure better protection of the consumer's interests. Various statutes intended to protect the consumer against different forms of deceit, injury, and exploitation were enacted. This is all from Wikipedia. Malpractice insurance coverage has become very common, especially in medical profession. In India, the Competition Act 2002 regulates and maintains competition in the market through its provisions prescribing anti-competitive agreements and abuse of dominance. We also have the Consumer Protection Act 1986 as stated before, CPA, which seeks to protect the interests of the consumers against unfair trade practices, deficiency of services, information asymmetry, etc. Under the Competition Act, the Competition Commission of India, shortly CCI, is the adjudicatory body for issues relating to competition, whereas under the CPA, the District Forum, the State Forum, and the National Consumer Forum are empowered to deal with issues affecting consumers. This dichotomy and separation of the adjudicatory bodies dealing with the issues of competition and consumer interest is in stark contrast to the mechanism established in the US and the UK, where the Federal Trade Commission and the Office of Fair Trading respectively are entrusted with the enforcement of competition law as well as consumer law. This unification of powers of enforcement in a single body is not simply a matter of administrative convenience. It's in recognition of the fact that consumer law and competition law are both concerned with the objective of consumer welfare, a term that can be interpreted in a number of ways. It is further acknowledged that consumer welfare cannot be achieved in isolation by the application of either of the two. Moreover, in achieving the stated objectives, it is important to understand how both the policies interact with each other. Such regulatory models assume that the sovereign synergies between the two areas of law can be best utilized if jurisdiction is vested in a single adjudicatory body. Though a single body is given the baton to adjudicate the claims under both legislations, it is important to understand that the policy goals of competition law differ significantly from the objectives that consumer law seeks to attain. While the former is concerned with the sustenance of competition in the market, the focus of the latter is primarily on the efficiency of the transaction between the individual seller and the consumer. Awareness on consumer protection amongst Indians is very low. I would say it exists seldom. Prime objective of this video is to enhance that awareness all over the globe. Consumer protection is a group of laws and organizations designed to ensure the rights of consumers as well as fair trade, competition, and accurate information in the marketplace. The laws are designed to prevent businesses that engage in fraud or specified unfair practices from gaining an advantage over competitors. Government of India, shortly GOI, has passed more than 3 dozen laws and amended them from time to time to put more teeth into the enforcement machinery to ensure better protection of the consumer's interests. The role of these laws to protect the interests of consumers has been far from satisfactory. All of you know that, right? That's why I said we are in its infancy. This is partly due to the fact that the consumer is ignorant of the different laws, orders, and rules in force. He or she does not really know that there are laws for consumer welfare. Even if she or he knows their existence, legal procedures are so complicated, irksome, expensive, and time consuming that he or she gives up the idea of going to the courts. When a consumer is aware about these legislations and other provisions and exercises them at appropriate time and place, then it is very difficult for any business to exploit them. India is a big country where a majority of consumers are poor, helpless, and disorganized. It is imperative to enforce consumer protection legislations strictly to check malpractices, adulteration, and production of substandard goods, etc. It requires awareness on the part of consumers for proper enforcement of these laws. Most of the advertisements are misleading and tall claims are made to trick, fool, brainwash the general public. It is deceit, premeditated deceit, chargeable under Indian Penal Code IPC under Section 420. Especially health products, edible items and cosmetics, it is very highly rampant. For example, can any drink increase one's memory power or enhance the health? Edible items, false claims are made that the product contains so many essential nutrients essential for humans, animals, etc. Cosmetics in particular, so-called fairness creams, can never make anybody fair, since the color is due to the pigments, which can never be changed. And if you burn the top layer, peel off the skin, the effect will only be short term. Mineral water used in almost all households is a misnomer, since only natural spring water can be called so, or the water should be fortified with essential minerals. Multivitamins are another farce. Organic food, vegetables, fruits, spinach, etc., has all the essential nutrients required for all animals, humans. All allopathy medicines are chemical compounds that have so many adverse reactions besides the requisite effects. Siddha, Ayurveda, Unani medicines are made from natural herbs and so will not have any negative effects at least. Product manufacturers offer warranty, guarantee. Nowadays, very few products come under guarantee, it's only warranty, right? Is there any hospital or medical doctor that offers such warranty, guarantee to the patients who pay such high charge for the medical treatment? Why recommend unwanted medical tests or convert even normal delivery as cesarean? It is beyond the capacity of the concerned patients and their families to most of the times, but they are forced to pay through their nose since it's a question of life and death. It is sheer exploitation. Once upon a time, medical profession was considered a noble profession and they were considered as demigods. Teaching was also considered as a noble profession, which is no longer true. It is very rare to find honest medical doctors, hospitals, teachers dedicated to the profession and follow the rules and regulations to the core. Just compare the present medical expenses or education expenses to what existed about 2 decades back. Cost of living is going through the roof and salaried people are leading such a miserable life, and so many families end up in dire straits due to borrowing beyond their limit, beyond their capacity, living on plastic money, credit cards, that's what I mean, etc. Most of the banks employ real thugs, gundas, as collection agents to harass the borrower and the family. Sometimes the whole family commits suicide as a result of all these acts. World has become highly materialistic and the whole world revolves around money, and there is no life without money. Traders hike up the prices and offer discount to attract the consumers, especially during the so-called the season period, clearance sale and all that. Don't go for such things. How many of you know that MRP means maximum retail price and product should be sold at a price lower than MRP? How many retail shops, pharmacies provide proper receipt to the consumers? Even medicines, packed edible products, the manufacturing date, expiry date are changed and products are sold after the expiry date. All these are perishable commodities, and people who consume such products after the expiry date end up losing their lives too at times, or forced to spend a heavy amount on requisite treatment to recover. Antibiotics should be used with utmost care. Some doctors recommend antibiotics even for viral infections. It's not a cure. Good doctors will say that. Pharmacies dispense even prescription medicines without any prescription. Some people think that they know their body well and adopt self-medication. Some people stop the medicines prescribed, especially antibiotics, and do not complete the full course. Ultimately, it results in what we call superbugs, leads to antibiotic resistance. Bacteria can either be probiotic or antibiotic. Probiotic is good. Standard operating procedures, shortly SOPs, are not adhered to. In medical profession, it's a must really. So it is a systemic failure. In spite of various provisions providing protection to the consumer and providing for stringent action against adulterated and substandard articles in the different enactments enactments like Code of Civil Procedures 1908, the Indian Contract Act 1972, the Sale of Goods Act 1930, the Indian Penal Code 1860, the Standards of Weights and Measures, which is legal metrology now, Act 1976, and the Motor Vehicles Act 1988. Very little could be achieved in the field of consumer protection. Though the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices, shortly MRTP Act 1969, and the Prevention of Food Adulteration Act 1954 have provided relief to the consumers, yet it became necessary to protect the consumers from the exploitation and to save them from adulterated and substandard goods and services, and to safeguard the interests of the consumers. In order to provide for better protection of the interests of the Consumer Protection Bill 1986 was introduced in the Lok Sabha on 5th of December 1986. Besides, Food Safety and Standards Institute of India, FSSAI shortly, was also established to certify food products. The Consumer Protection Bill 1986 seeks to provide for better protection of the interests of the consumers, and for the purpose to make provision for the establishment of consumer councils and other authorities for the settlement of consumer disputes and for matter connected therewith. It seeks inter alia to promote and protect the rights of consumers, such as the right to be protected against marketing of goods which are hazardous to life and property, the right to be informed about the quality, quantity, potency, purity, standard, and price of goods to protect the consumer against unfair trade practices, the right to be assured, wherever possible, access to an authority of goods at competitive prices, the right to be heard and to be assured that consumers' interests will receive the consideration at appropriate forums, the right to seek redressal against unfair trade practices or unscrupulous exploitation of consumers, and the right to consumer education. These objects are sought to be promoted and protected by the Consumer Protection Council, to be established at the central and state level. To provide speedy and simple redressal to consumer disputes, a quasi-judicial machinery is sought to be set up at the district, state, and central levels. These quasi-judicial bodies will observe the principles of natural justice and have been empowered to give relief in a specific nature and to award, wherever appropriate, compensation to consumers. Penalties for non-compliance of the orders given by the quasi-judicial bodies have also been provided. The CPA 1986 was passed by both the Houses of Parliament, and it received the assent of the President on 24th of December 1986. It came on the statutes book as a Consumer Protection Bill Act 1986, 68 of 1986. List of amending acts are the Consumer Protection Amendment Act 1991, 34 of 1991, the Consumer Protection Amendment Act 1993, 50 of 1993, the Consumer Protection Amendment Act 2002, 62 of 2002. Consumers all over the world are demanding value for their precious money in the form of quality goods and better services in a true sense. At least in developed countries, modern technological developments and innovations have no doubt made a great impact on the quality, accessibility, availability, and safety of goods and services. But the fact of life is that the consumers are still victims of unscrupulous and exploitative practices prevailing since many years. Consumers' exploitation assumes numerous forms like adulteration of food, spurious drugs, dubious hire purchase plans, high prices, poor quality, deficient services, deceptive advertisements, hazardous products, black marketing, and so on. Now, a popular quote by father of our nation, who is that? Mahatma Gandhi: a customer is the most important visitor on our premises. He is not dependent on us. We are dependent on him. He is not an interruption in our work. He is the purpose of it. He is not an outsider in our business. He is part of it. We are not doing him a favor by serving him. He is doing us a favor by giving us an opportunity to do so. This is by great Mahatma Gandhi, who himself was a lawyer, barrister. The growing interdependence of the world economy and the international character of many business practices have contributed to the development of universal emphasis on consumer rights protection and promotion. Consumer is sovereign and customer is a king are nothing more than myths in the present scenario, particularly in the developing societies. However, it has been realized, and rightly so, that the consumer protection is a socio-economic program to be pursued by the government as well as the business, as the satisfaction of the consumers is in the interest of both. Manu Smriti describes the social, political, and economic conditions of ancient society. Manu, the ancient lawgiver, also wrote about ethical trade practices. He prescribed a code of conduct to traders and specified punishments to those who committed certain crimes against buyers. Written subsequent to Manu Smriti, Kautilya's Arthasastra is considered to be a treatise and a prominent source describing various theories of statecraft and the rights and duties of subjects in ancient society. Though its primary concern is with matters of practical administration, consumer protection occupies a prominent place in Arthasastra. It describes the role of the state in regulating the trade and its duty to prevent crimes. Consumer protection legislation enacted after India's independence from Britain include the Essential Commodities Act of 1955, the Prevention of Food Adulteration Act of 1954, and the Standard of Weights and Measures Act of 1976. A benefit of these acts is that they do not require the consumer to prove menstruity. Rather, the offences are of strict liability and not dependent on any particular intention or knowledge. Criminal law in the field of consumer protection has acquired much significance as consumers are less inclined to go to civil court for small claims. It has been said that the functional value of criminal law in the field of consumer protection is a high one, and it has a respectable pedigree. Another view is that there has been an attempt to look at consumer protection as a public interest issue rather than as a private issue, to be left to individuals for settlement in court. Enough about COPRA, CPA, and its history. Let us now move on to reality, which is very harsh. After sales customer service is nothing but the worst in India. As per the rules of all organizations need to provide a toll-free number, customer service number. Nowadays, most of the organizations provide one and only a toll number starting with 1860, which is a premium number chargeable to all consumers irrespective of the long duration calls free plan they adopted for. These consumer service numbers are computerized, and we are forced to spend at least 15 minutes, if not more, of our invaluable time interacting with a damn idiot programmed computer pressing so many numbers, or interacting with the interactive voice response system IVRS, or text chat with the chatbots. The option to talk with a real person is hidden somewhere beyond the reach of most of the customers, and even if you are smart enough to figure it out, the call center associate with the subcontract service firm tries to avoid answering and puts you on hold forever. Once or she makes out that you are irate and genuinely upset with the company and its product. Can this be called customer service? Service technicians, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, painters, automobile service, electronic service, etc. real rogues like medical doctors are very creative, extracting as much money from you as possible, recommending unwanted service and replacement of perfectly good components too. They play tricks on psychology as if it's all a must, else the consequences will affect you adversely, same like by medical doctors. Electronic service technicians are the worst of all. Always make it a point to remove components like SIM, subscriber identification module, SIM card, memory card, hard disk assembly, HDS, etc. with documents like contacts, messages, photos, videos, your personal information, especially financial, address proofs, etc. Else, these so-called technicians will have free access to all this vital, confidential, sensitive information and abuse them in all possible ways they can. Do not repent it later. These service technicians never keep up their promise and so many times you'll have to wait for them, wasting your invaluable time as if you don't have anything else to do. Most of them do not even have the requisite tools for service, and they are very cool in requesting the customer to provide the tools. Painters turn in empty-handed without paintbrush, rollers, etc. Will they paint with their bare hands or tongues like that? Always insist on a proper receipt for all purchases they make. One of the biggest retail supermarkets in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India prints a receipt on wax coated paper and nothing will be visible within a matter of 2 days. This is even for products for which warranty or guarantee is offered. Later, when a problem arises during the warranty period, the first thing they'll ask for is the original receipt for executing the required service. So many shops, either wholesale or retail, do not even affix the rubber stamp and signature on the warranty card, without which the warranty is invalid. Manufacturers come up with all kinds of excuses to avoid doing the free service during the warranty period. All banks are charging for SMS alerts, which include GST also, of course. Most of the banks are very prompt in charging for SMS alerts, but the alerts are sent very seldom or never. Most of the financial frauds are committed by the people working in the banks. Even the counterfeit notes, mostly it is circulated through the tellers in the banks or through ATMs. If you complain to the bank, they will insist on a written request for registering your mobile number once again, even though you have done it so many times, and they are fully aware of your registered mobile number, shortly RMN. SMS alerts are mandated by Reserve Bank of India RBI since hacking, cyber crimes, financial, personal identity thefts have become very common. One public sector bank, which is the Apex Bank under RBI, I do not like to mention the name of the bank, all of you can guess it, I leave it to your guess, charged me penalty for no fault of mine 3 times in the recent past. One time they held up a check I deposited for transaction. Since the bank was on strike for a week or so, this check should have been cleared in 1 day normally. Second time, they declined a check issued to my friend, comparing my signature on this check with my age-old signature, which was my specimen signature about 35 years back. Third time, a check I deposited was declined by the issuing bank for some reason, and this bank where I deposited the check did not even bother to inform me or my family. Only when I checked with the bank in person, I was informed. All these occasions, they were very prompt in charging heavy penalty with the GST, but no intimation whatsoever to me or my family members. RBI has issued formal circulars to the bank, all banks, to defer the EMI payments without any penalty or additional interest for 6 months attributed to pandemic COVID-19. But banks are harassing the borrowers with so many calls, SMS. They are very prompt in all that, insisting on prompt payments, or else they are charging heavy penalty plus interest on deferred payments too. In case you have sufficient deposit with the bank, this EMI amount is automatically debited from your deposit. This is very harsh when so many people have lost their livelihood or living on reduced salary or income. Broadband service providers promise a speed of some XX, and actual speed is hardly 1/100th of the promised speed. There is one particular company, okay, it starts with the name B, ends with L, there is a A in between. One should never opt for long duration packs, since you will be stuck with that company. If you deactivate that service before that, you will be the loser. Block automatic renewals too. 3G is considered high technology in our country, and maximum speed is in megabits, Mbps, megabits per second. Australia is testing data transfer rate in terabits per second. How much is 1 tera? 1000 of 1000, 10 power 6 of a mega. Terabits per second, TBPS. These companies are confusing the consumers by misusing bits and bytes freely. They use small b for bits and capital B for bytes. That's where the customer is tricked. 1 byte is 8 bits. Okay, when it comes to the data transfer rate, the speed in bytes will be only 1/8 of the BPS, bits per second. Very few consumers are knowledgeable about this difference. Direct to home, DTH service providers cheat their consumers by recommending unwanted bouquets combo packs, and they manipulate the online transactions of the consumer's account without the consumer's consent, and they never bother to explain in spite of formal queries from the consumer zillion times to conceal these unlawful acts. There are consumer courts that deals with these cases, but consumers neither have the time nor money to shell out for these legal proceedings against these altruistic, natural born cheats, white liars. How many private hospitals are charging the government stipulated rates for testing, treatment, etc. presently for COVID-19? They exploited the loopholes in the system. There should be capital punishment for all these premeditated crimes, by the professional perpetrators. Rules, if not enforced strictly, is as good as not having any rules at all. Corruption is the root cause of all evil. Weed out corruption by making the system foolproof. Consider this a constructive criticism for getting right the issues like these and protect the consumer rights to the core. Ours is a country of Mahatma Gandhis and not Godses. One time, when late President, internationally renowned scientist Dr. Abdul P. Kalam visited a private university, one student asked him how to weed out corruption. It's a good question, right? And Dr. Kalam likes to interact with the youngsters. Dr. Kalam smiled and said it's like a double-headed serpent, a vicious circle like the benzene ring, and absolute teamwork is a must for that to happen. If there are no givers, there won't be any takers too. It looks simple, right? So why do you give? I lived in USA for 1 decade. One has to learn all these good practices from countries like them, so advanced in everything. Consumer protection is so good, and cheats will never survive due to the high litigation and allied monetary compensation to the affected consumers. Why not learn good things like these and emulate such practices in India too? Even developed countries do not hesitate to learn good practices from other countries, like for instance greeting others with folded hands rather than shaking the hands or patting on the shoulder, especially due to COVID-19. India is very popular for its culture, ethnic wear like sari, salwars, dhoti, sherwani, besides of course vegetarian food dishes, satyagraha, yoga, meditation, etc. Life is always a mix of good and the bad. Differentiate good from the bad, like the bird. In Tamil we call it as Anna Paravai. I think in English it is swan, which is capable of drinking the milk, leaving the water. It's so smart. I don't know how it does that. I have never seen that happen right in front of my eyes. Discussion on topics like this can go on forever. Anyhow, let me pause here. I did not stop. Okay? There is a difference. We'll meet again real soon. Rest in peace and harmony. Always watch these videos with the closed caption subtitles for enhanced comprehension. I know I rushed through to complete the presentation within 20 minutes max. This is a time limit. I had set myself to retain the viewer's attention. I know nowadays I exceed this time limit since I make honest attempts to cover the selected topic more elaborately, including so many intricate details, referring so many articles and books too. Stay at home as much as possible to maintain social distancing attributed to pandemic novel COVID-19 and prolong your lifespan. Lead a healthy life. All the best.